All right, so I pretty much got done with the scraping and the sanding-ish, using my two different ribs, the flexible one, the metal one, and then also may have noticed in the time lapse, I switched to a couple of different size loop tools, especially as I was getting into the little hole in here. I wanted to make sure that that was all smooth and everything like that. So as you can see, hopefully you can see the texture. That's a pretty good angle. You can see that this has got a really rough texture, which it's not a big deal if you're going to be using, say, the jet black, the purple surprise, or one of those colors in the glazes that are going to cover everything up and really make it nice and smooth. Now, if you're planning on using a Celadon color, a Celadon blue, Celadon green, even the Aegean blue, or even clear transparent, if you want that nice grayish color, you need to smooth it out a little bit more. Now, again, I don't want you guys to use the sandpaper and the green scouring pads because that's going to create a lot of dust and it's going to kick up dust all over the place. So those things are used in just very moderation, just because we don't want the dust kicking up in the air. So instead, we're going to use a sponge. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, okay? So I just take my small sponge, wet it a little bit, okay? And then I'm just going to use that kind of like a sandpaper almost. But the difference is that this is going to smooth that out, okay, and get rid of all those little dents, okay, without the dust. And that is the key thing is, we always want to make sure that we're nice and healthy, and making sure we're taking care of ourselves. Now, I'm not using a lot of water. Don't think that more water is good, okay? You don't want to re-soften the clay, or the clay will actually dissolve on you if you use too much water. So it will absorb quite a bit, which means that the sponge is going to dry out. So yes, you will have to wet the sponge a few times, but just use it in moderation, okay? You'll notice when it's getting a lot smoother, okay, as you're using this. There should not be puddles anywhere. There should not be places where you see it all shiny and everything like that for very long. Like I said, it will absorb, your project will absorb a lot of the moisture, okay, from your sponge, and that's fine, okay? But if it starts to get soft or you start to feel like it's gonna fall apart, it's way too late by then, okay? So again, we're just gonna take, hopefully you can see that, all right? So I'll get you a nice close-up. My sponge is a little bit damp, okay? You just kind of go in a circular motion, okay? And back and forth. And we're getting rid of all those little tool marks that we created, okay? Or that were created by your rib and then the grains of sand that are in the clay, okay? So that looks more like that, okay? Instead of, I already smoothed all that out. Okay, so this, okay, will be much smoother than the lower part of that where you can see that. Okay, so that's the bottom part. I haven't done this area here yet, okay? But up here, okay, granted there's a little bit of grit to it, okay? If you really want to, and I don't necessarily recommend that, you can take your soft or the flexible rib and you can fold it and kind of have it like a taco kind of thing. Don't fold it all the way, but you can rub that and that'll push the sand particles beneath the surface, and that'll give you a little bit of a gloss. But honestly, it's not worth it, okay? You're gonna spend all that time smoothing it out, and the glaze is gonna do that for you. So even though it may feel a little bit on the rougher side, as long as you don't have those big scratches in there, okay, you should be fine. The glaze will cover all of that up, and it should make it look nice and pretty once we get the glaze on it, okay? But use a sponge instead of sandpaper or a scouring pad. This will save your lungs in the long run. It'll also save mine. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been trying to keep the dust down to a minimum as best we can. So, always want to think of our health first, especially with COVID and all the stuff that's been going on the last 2 years or so. Yeah, can you believe COVID's been going on for 2 years? I got a big chunk of something there. I didn't like that. All right, so I'm gonna have to just clean that off a little bit. Just use my loop tool. Like a chunk of wood or something like that. Go back with my sponge. If I need to, I can add a little bit more water. And there we go. All right, I'm gonna keep doing this. I'll smooth it out a little bit more, and then we'll have a finished product here in about another 5-10 more minutes of this, and I should be just about done. This is the final phase of completing the smooth coil base. You want to make sure that it's nice and smooth before you turn it in, because you cannot smooth this once it's fired. Using sandpaper or anything on there to try and smooth it after it's fired is much more difficult because the clay is a lot harder after it's fired, okay? It's not necessarily vitrified where it's gonna hold water, but it is definitely harder than what we have right here. And if you do that, if you try to sand it later on, it's too late. Do the work now so that you can make it nice and easy for yourself, okay?